Hi guys, welcome to Miley Media. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. Today I'm going to share some ghost stories with you from behind prison walls, brought to you by COs and all the crazy things that they've seen while on duty. If you enjoy this story, make sure you leave a comment, a like, and share it. Let's jump right in. Number 1. I won't say the name of the prison due to privacy reasons, but I can say that I was a CO in the state of Florida. And I'm going to start with my first experience ever in the prison. It was my first week, probably my third day on the compound. We have to count inmates, and I was working a 16-hour shift. During the night shift, there's nothing to do, so we count the inmates who are locked in cells hourly. It was 2 a.m. count, and I was in the T dorm. T dorms are shaped like a T. There are 2 stories, and I was on the second story, on the right side of the wing. The very first cell that I went up to, an older white inmate had his face against the glass. Inmates like to gun officers, which means masturbate to them, and I had been gunned quite a few times in the short amount of time that I had been there. Being gunned was something I didn't tolerate, so I told the inmate that he needed to get back on his bunk by the time I came back from counting the rest of the wing, or I'd make sure to throw handcuffs on him. He didn't say anything. I wrote down the cell number and continued my count. It was the first cell on the wing, so I wouldn't have forgotten which cell it was anyway. I continued my count, and I went back to the cell to make sure that the inmate was back on his bunk. After shining my flashlight in the room, I counted 2 inmates, but these inmates were neither old or white. I obviously freaked out, and I told the officer in the station once I got back. And this officer told me that the guy's name is Kevin, and he does it frequently. The officer that I was speaking to told me that he was actually the one who found Kevin dead after Kevin had smoked himself to death on K2 mixed with rat poison 3 months before I began the job. Prisons are not silent places, and I have a ton of stories to share. Number 2. I worked in multiple prisons, and due to privacy reasons I won't name them. I wasn't at this prison for very long, and due to the notoriety of this specific inmate, it'll give away that prison's location, but that's fine. At one point in my career, I worked in the prison that holds Florida's death row, before transferring to a prison that was a lot closer to home. Due to the fact that I'm a female, they really did not want me on the row unless it was for training. I was training, and during my training I was given a tour of the row and the death chamber. Our death chamber is comprised of 2 rooms. One holds our gurney for lethal injection, and one holds our electric chair. I wasn't technically working on the row, but we did have an inmate who was on death watch, and there needed to be an officer in there 24/7. Death watch is where the inmate is moved to the final holding cell until the execution, where they receive their last meal and everything like that. An officer came to relieve me for a 15-minute break, and due to the size of the prison, I couldn't walk out and have a cigarette in time. I decided to explore a little bit on my break, out of morbid curiosity. I walked into the room with the gurney and saw it from the window, and felt my heart sink, knowing that the inmate I was watching over would be strapped down to it in just a few hours. He wasn't. He ended up getting a stay of execution. I ended up finding myself in the room with the chair when I did. Something felt really off. I felt a mix of feelings, despair, anxiety. My mind was racing. It felt uneasy, and I turned to leave the room when I heard, "You don't think I'd be back, huh?" I felt like it was an Arctic tundra. I began to shiver. My spine was tingling. I was frozen in fear because I knew that I had entered a chamber alone. I forced myself to turn back around, and had my pepper spray in hand just in case I ran into an inmate that somehow escaped from the row. I did run into an inmate, but definitely not the one that I was expecting to. I was staring dead into the face of Ted Bundy sitting in the chair that he died in. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My heart was racing, and I felt like fainting. I began to back away slowly. It was like he was alive. He wasn't see-through. The only way that I would have known that it was an apparition was because I knew that he had been executed in the 80s. Still, frozen in fear, I watched what appeared to be an alive Ted Bundy disappear like he had never been there in the first place. I got the hell out of there and was unable to speak to anyone the rest of the day. Number 3. At one of the prisons that I worked at, we had 3 T dorms and 4 open bay dorms. Our open bay dorms do not have any cells, and it's just lined with bunk beds. An open bay is set up to where you walk in the front of the door, You have a hallway, your officer station is right in front of you, and you have wings on both sides that you're able to overlook. But they're separated. The only restroom that's available to officers is located in the hallway as soon as you walk in. No inmates have access to that hallway, obviously. Keep the bathroom location in mind and I'll come back to that. Anyway, I was working an overnight shift while covering for someone. This dorm is the dorm that holds our pedophiles. Most of them are in their 60s and 80s, and they don't really give you much of a problem. So you're usually assigned to that dorm by yourself at night, unlike our other dorms that hold offenders that are younger. Our captain makes his round every night and checks each dorm. You're able to hear when someone's keys are put into the front door, and you're able to hear another person walking in the hallway. I was on hour 14 of my shift, and considering I was sitting in a dark room with no cell phone, books, or anything to do or read, I began to doze off. I heard the key in the door, and I woke up immediately, because I knew that the captain would chew me out and potentially fire me if he found me asleep. I heard my front door open, and heard footsteps coming towards my officer station. It's not a very long hallway. After about 2 minutes, I still heard walking around, and I heard the distinct jingling of keys, which again, no inmates have access to. I looked out the officer station window and didn't see anyone, so I walked into the hallway and knocked on the bathroom door, and there was no answer. I decided to go out and check both wings of the dorm to make sure that my captain was okay. I walked onto the left wing, and as soon as I did, I heard a toilet flush and a shower come on. I was highly confused and irritated at this point, because all the inmates were asleep. I shined my flashlight towards the bathroom, but there was nobody in sight. I walked around the bathroom for a bit to make sure no one was hiding, but again, no one. My captain also wasn't in the dorm. Yet, I was still hearing jingling of keys. At this point, I was fed up and exhausted, so I decided to leave the wings and use the officer restroom. As I was in there, I heard keys and footsteps again, coming from the outside of the door. I also heard whistling, but it wasn't heavy male footsteps or a male whistle. It was dainty footsteps, as if a female officer was in my dorm. I kept hearing it, but I never saw anything. When I woke the inmates up for their morning breakfast, one of them said, "Miss, you ran into Sergeant last night. She comes to visit us often. Don't pay her any mind." I let it go and walked them to the chow hall, and then I eventually asked my captain if he had been in the dorm last night. But he said he had not, because he was caught up in our Max unit dealing with a more important issue. Sergeant was killed by an inmate by getting her throat slit after not providing extra toilet paper back when this was 100% maximum security in the 70s. She clocked in and was never able to clock out. Alright guys, that's it for the stories today. If you enjoyed them, comment and let me know, and I'll be sure to put more prison horror stories in there. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. And I know this is kind of a short story, but I'll be putting another one out this week. Thank you.